What's up guys, Keith here, aka Guatch on Instagram. For a while now people have been asking me how I do the hybrid coils. A lot of people have already figured it out. It's not exactly an easy thing to explain via text, so I don't do it all that often. So figured I would finally get around to shooting a video for you guys. Hope it helps, and yeah. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show you is normally on a hybrid I like to actually plan it out on a piece of paper like this. You can do it however you want to, but this just kind of helps me out because there are times when you'll do it wrong and you'll already be so far into it that you can't go back, and that's no fun for anybody. So this one I decided to do a triple core because number one, a lot of people have already figured out the dual cores. Not to mention, if I show you a triple, you'll be able to take those same methods and apply it to 2 cores. And of course you can use whatever gauge you decide to use, different combination of methods. They're endless. So the one I decided to do today, just for the sake of the video, just so it'd be a little easier to see and understand, I'm going to basically use 3 pieces of wire, and I'm going to take 32 gauge in this case, just because it's going to be a little bigger, a little easier for the camera to see, a little quicker as well. But I'm going to take 32 gauge and do basically what I've drawn out here with all these spots, and I'm counting each one of these as 1 wrap, and your leads are going to be longer than that, but this just helps you plan it out. So you can see I've done a whole bunch of other ones this way, and just helps to have something to look over and reference while you're actually doing the coil. Alright, so I've skipped a couple steps for you here just so we can save a little bit of time. I've already straightened a piece of Anarchist 26 gauge, cut it into 3 sections about 8 inches a piece. I like to keep them as short as possible. It kind of alleviates some of the twisting you might experience. I've decided to switch to 34 gauge last second. I think it'll make it a little bit easier. Anyway, if you look at our blueprint here, you'll notice if this is the center of the coil, sorry, it's this one. If you look at the center of the coil, I've done opposite on each side of it. I figured out a while back that if you do it opposite what you did on each side of center, it'll end up looking identical across the coil. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll figure it out if you ever try to mess with it. So that's the way I like to do it. Anyway, this little piece of paper is going to come in handy. You'll notice a while back I figured out that for 1/8 inner diameter, the wraps end up being about 1/2 inch, and each one of these represents 1 section or 1 wrap, and I use that up under the wire like this to determine how long the section is. On our blueprint here, you can see we're going to clap in this section and opposite on this section. So I'm going to start somewhere right in here. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get started. I'm going to loose Clapton all the way up to the point where I think we ought to start, and then I'm going to tighten my Clapton up and create 1 section or 1 wrap of this. And you'll kind of see what I mean here in just a second. And I usually check it with this little thing and just see if it looks about right, and it does. So I'm going to take these cutters and put it as close as I can to the cores and pull on the Claptoning wire pretty tight and cut it as close as you can. Now, I know there are multiple different ways out there to do this. You can put it between the cores or go all the way to the other end, whatever you end up deciding to do. But what I've found is that since it doesn't really matter, it's not doing much electrically, this works just fine, and as long as you pull it pretty tight, I've never experienced it coming apart and shorting or anything like that. Just, you know, keep it tight. So then I'll grab this side, pull it back out of the chuck, and that's one thing that's important, is leaving it in the chuck in a way where it'll come back out pretty easily. And then I'm going to unclapton that space Clapton all the way up to that section. And right in here, I'm going to pull pretty tight again, just like we did on the other part, and cut it. The first part's done. So now we're going to add another wire to the equation. I usually like to take and bend the very last section here into a little elbow so that I can get it into the swivel, which you could barely see. But I'm going to put it on this side and pull that little elbow till it bends over like the rest of them here. And then I'm going to take this end out of the chuck. Put our wire back in this little, this is going wonderfully, isn't it? Alright. Now, what I'm going to do here, and I'll try to get out of your light and hopefully you can see, is take the one wire that's furthest away on the part we already did and kind of give that a little bend away from the rest of it here. Make sure that's the outer one though. Yeah. So I'm going to bend that just a little bit for right now. And then I'm going to get the other one that we just added in there and I'm going to pull those two pretty tight with each other. And I'm going to get that back in the chuck. It's a little jacked up right here. That's why I like to leave the sections a little bit longer than you think you need, because you're going to cut a little bit off because you're going to be going back and forth like this. So we'll get that in the chuck, tighten it up. Of course, make sure it's not going to pop off your swivel down here. That's always annoying. And what I'm going to do is basically keep pressure on the drill and pull this other wire back and bend it just like that. Yeah, I know that sucks. You're going to have to fix that later, but that's the best way I've found to do it. So I like to put it up here, kind of in the rest of the wires. Sorry, you couldn't see that. I still don't know if you can. But anyway, I kind of like to get it out of the way of all the rest of it. And then we're going to take our 34 gauge again. Get it all lined up in the chuck. And like I said, you want to leave it in there so that we can pull it back out later. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to space clapton up to about the section that I think it ought to stop at, and then I'm going to tighten it up and finish it off. So somewhere right in here, and it doesn't matter if you're exact right in this area, because you can always check it with that piece of paper. And then when we're taking this off, we'll just go as far as we need to make it even. So I'm just going to finish this off here. Pull pretty tight and carefully try to get this as close as I can to that other section. About right there is probably the best I'm going to get. And same thing, I'm going to take my little cutters and cut it off just like so. I put this wire up. Then I'm going to pull this back out of the chuck, do the same thing we did just a second ago. And you can probably see where this is headed. You may not even need to watch the rest of the video, but I'm going to finish it off anyway. Now I'm going to check it with that piece of paper. Make sure that we've got somewhere around one wrap, and it's not an exact science. So somewhere right in there is okay with me. I'm going to take it, pull, cut, and we'll take this all loose again and try to straighten this piece out. And I normally just kind of straighten it a little bit like so. And then I'm going to put this in back in the swivel. And you'll see why here in just a second. These are not cooperating. So I'm just going to cut them evenly. And put that in the swivel. Just like so. And then what I've found is you can take some pliers of some kind and grab that lead that we just did that to, and then I like to grab it in the middle. Well, the nylons just fell apart, so I'll fix that here in a second. And then I'll just kind of pull on that one that we did and hold it pretty tight right here and just work it until it's almost straight again. And then I'm going to fix my nylons and I'm going to squeeze it right here and try to straighten all this out before the next step. And then I'll start again. Alright, so here we are on the last section. I already took the whole thing, flipped it, straightened it out as much as I could. Took the opposite, or the outermost wire from the fuse section on this side and bent it out of the way just like we did before. And now I'm just going to do like I did on the other side and finish this off. Whoops. Just bend that out of the way a little bit more. I got a little bit lazy there. Back that up a little bit and fix it. And that's probably about it right there. So one more time we'll cut it and pull. And I'll put this wire up. Take this end out of the chuck. And now, just like last time, since I've already got most of this semi straightened out, I'll just grab it at the straightest part here and grab that wire that we just bent out of the way and try to straighten it out as much as possible. Right up next to where the bend is where I like to grab it with these things and kind of pull from every angle sort of in that direction. And I'm pulling pretty hard against these nylons and it tends to do the trick. So I won't make you suffer through all this, but what I'm going to do next is basically take my 2 pairs of nylons and straighten all of this out the best that I can and coil it up. Now, you all already know how to wrap a coil, but I will say you're going to want to take a little bit more time than normal. Make sure that you wrap it nice and tight, kind of work it as it goes around to keep all these things laying as flat as possible. You also have to keep in mind that the bigger the Claptoning wire tends to make each section that you did a little wider than the last sometimes, which will cause it to kind of wrap funny, and you'll see what I mean. But just keep it nice and tight and work it slowly onto the bit. You'll get there. It's not very difficult. So, okay. Alright, so I'm going to shoot this part with the macro. Here's the wrapped up coil. Sorry that I'm so shaky. You can see it came out looking even on both sides here. And if you look at the back of the coil, you can see that our sections where the transitions are met pretty close to the back of the coil. That's perfectly acceptable. I'd put that kind of on the lower side of the back of the coil, because when you go to pull on it, it's going to want to come around from the bottom to the front. Kind of hard to explain what I mean there, but if you pull too much and it hasn't tightened up yet, it's going to end up bringing these transitions around to the front. So try to aim for, like I said, about the back of the bottom of the coil, if you get what I'm saying. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm not going to install it for you, but I think you get the picture and you can use that and go from here. Alright, so that's pretty much it. Obviously I cleaned it up a little bit after what I showed you. I always take and straighten out each little section, and even when I wrapped it there, I really didn't spend as much time kind of pulling tight, making sure all those little sections met so there's no gaps in your coil. But it is possible, I promise. So yeah, you can take that and pretty much do whatever you want. The dual core is a little bit easier. I've done up to 5 cores. It gets a little more complicated. There's a lot more straightening involved, but as long as you got some nylons and a ton of patience, you should be just fine. So I hope that helped you. Yeah, tag me if you make any of these hybrids. I'd sure like to see it. Well, have a good one.